leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, the podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I am not Naji Gehchan, your usual host. I'm Jill Donahue, your host for this very special episode. I have hijacked the microphone and I'm turning the tables today to interview Naji himself, because Naji's story is one that simply must be heard. Having helped thousands of pharma people discover their purpose and connect with their why, I know a deep-rooted purpose when I hear one. Naji's life has been dedicated to serving patients and leading teams and organizations toward the noble purpose of making life better. After medical school, business school, and humanitarian experiences, we are lucky he has chosen the pharma industry to continue his important work. His current title is Global Brand Development Leader in Oncology at Lilly, but really, he goes to work every day to ensure medical innovations and discoveries can reach the people who need them. Naji, it's your turn. We'd love to hear what has inspired you to create this podcast. Let's start at the beginning, though. Tell us where you're from and a bit about your childhood, if you would.
Oh, Jill, thank you so much. You've been too generous with your words, to me. And it's really an honor to have you interview me. I should start with this. You're such an incredible leader, and you're the one who pushed me to talk about my story some years ago. So it's just such a pleasure to be with you today and share again bits and pieces and whatever questions you have for me.
Well, I'm so glad that you were willing to be vulnerable to share your story that first time. And now it's inspiring thousands. So let's share it with others who may not know it. So I think it first started, Naji, when I asked you to tell me about why you're so passionate. When I first met you, I sensed that passion and purpose. And I asked you, where does that come from? And that began quite a story. Would you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, it started, with, I should say, very long time ago with my childhood, being born, raised in Lebanon during moments of tensions, of war in the country. And during that time, I remember my childhood seeing people suffering and wanting to try and help them. And I still remember, one very specific situation where my grandfather during war was injured, and the Lebanese Red Cross, the humanitarian teams, would come every day, take him to do his operations, help him treat his injuries, and I was 5-6 years old, I would say, and this was really the time where I was starting to see and think like, this is what I want to do. I want to try help people when they need it most. So fast forward, I grew up with this idea of being able to help patients, help people. This is why I did my med school in Lebanon, and I joined the Lebanese Red Cross as a humanitarian first aid responder in the Lebanese and Beirut district specifically, and that was really a life-changing and really it's cool. This experience that I had in the Lebanese Red Cross, and it was time where we had, unfortunately, in Lebanon there was still unrest, there was still terrorist attack, we had also war, and I was, in my 20s, like 20 years old, joining this group of people, very diverse, like people I would have never met, because it's not only physicians, we're like coming from all over the places, with a real purpose, is to save people, help people, rescue people in the moment they need us. Right. So that was really a life-changing experience that I had leading teams towards this purpose. And I know, what I shared with you, that was really a defining moment in my life. I still remember June 13th, 2007. It was, I was getting to the Red Cross. I was the team leader at that time. And the moment we got in, we received a call asking us to go to a Beirut district. And this call was very strange, because they immediately tell us, you go, there is still no other rescuers.
Right.
who are on call. And don't forget to take all your helmet and your jackets while you go there. So we rushed into the ambulance. We went and we arrived there. We were literally the first one. There was no police, no firefighters, no one. And we discover a huge bombing scene.
Right.
I won't go on describing the horror that we saw, but and during that time, it literally took us a couple of seconds to decide
Right.
what to do. I looked at my team. We were four, and in fractions of seconds, we decided to go and start rescuing people. After that moment, in fact, this is where we literally decided to go beyond being a physician in a clinic. I saw the power of leading people who
Right.
themselves can help others,
Right.
and how you can multiply and amplify, in fact, the power that you have when you're driven by this purpose. You share the same values, and literally you help people help others.
Right.
So that's how fast forward, in fact, I moved to France, and I'm proud now leading teams since more than a decade in the pharma industry, or through other work that I do, literally empowering people and helping them help patients in need.
So interesting. It gives me goosebumps when I hear you describe that moment and how life decisions in that defining moment, those seconds that you looked at the situation. Because I'm sure you could have been bomb could have gone off when you were in there, right? That's what you were thinking. You could be leading your team to their demise
Yeah,
at that in that moment. But
definitely.
you went forward.
Yeah, and this is after sharing it with you, I think one of the pieces, and I've been discussing with many people who don't want to share their stories. The first time you asked me, I was like, "There's nothing. Why would I share my story? There's nothing
Really?
special in it." Yeah,
Oh wow.
and I still believe this, right? Like it's just one story. I did what I had to do at a certain point of time in my life. But the moment I shared it. You convinced me because you told me it might help others and inspire others, in fact,
Yeah.
to be themselves and do even more. And the
Yeah.
second benefit that I had, I started reflecting back, right, and
Yeah.
reflect on why I did what I did, how I led. And to your questions, yes, when we went in, there was a huge risk of another bomb,
Right.
right? And there was like 7 cars burning. Like all, cars by themselves would have been bombs, right?
Right.
But we went
Right.
in. So when I reflect, why did I go in? Why did my people follow me? Right? Like how many times in corporate world we think about this? We talk about trust. We talk about, a leader, people will follow leader. We never literally risk our lives,
Right.
in the corporate world, literally, right? So thinking about this and reflecting about this definitely took me to this idea of there is definitely trust, but there's something beyond trust, right? For people to go, for people to risk literally their lives to save others or towards a purpose that they strive for.
Well, and speaking of trust, that's what it did for me, Naji, when I first heard your story and I understood your true noble intention to make a difference in the world. It made me immediately connect with you, want to do anything to help you. And that has continued for years now, right? Once people understand your noble purpose. And I think it was that vulnerability that you were willing to share that story. And it's so funny to me that you think, oh, my story was nothing. Everyone says that, but everyone has a story. And yours is so incredibly amazing. You talked about growing up and seeing your house bombed. How many times did you have to move as a child because your house was
Yeah. I don't even remember, but yeah, we kept moving until 10 years old. Like we moved quite a bit. Well, my parents moved us quite a bit. Yeah.
because your homes were bombed? And you
Yeah.
said going to school was the most dangerous part of the day?
Yeah, yeah, and we had this chat. We discussed about this during those last months, even more than a year now with the pandemic. I thought a lot about this, right? Like all the stress that we have as parents. I have two
Right.
little daughters. I was seeing them not going to school. We're doing our
Hmm.
best to teach them, right? And suddenly, I looked at my wife and I was like, we never had a full school year until we were 10, and here we are today, right? Like, yeah, and
Same
literally
thing, right?
during my childhood, we moved around. Our school years, we started them. We never knew when to finish them. But again, I've never shared this, or I even unconsciously never think of it, because I had, a great childhood. And this is one of the things where I always struggle to talk about this, and my wife would still, until now, like, no, we can't talk about that. And it's not because it was bad, because we never, I never wanted to be in this unconscious biases of a war child. Oh my God, should have
Right.
been terrible.
Right.
No, we were surrounded by love, by care, by parents, by communities, and yeah, when I think back of my childhood, it was a positive childhood. I shared with you one moment at Disney,
Yeah.
later on, but it literally is like this, right? Yeah, I had a great childhood, but I was
Well, tell them
living
about
in a
that
war.
moment at Disney. It wasn't Disney Park, it was Disney University.
Yeah,
And
yes.
describe that, if you
So
would.
it was my 10 years ago, I think, and we were at Disney University in Orlando, a part of an internal training, and we were 20, I think, 20 plus people from all over the world. And the instructor asked us a question about our childhood, like at 7 years old, give us a memory. And obviously people around the room started to talk, and Disney is a big part of our, about the childhood. So as people were starting to share, like their excitement because of their first trip at that time to Disney, or what they watched around Mickey, I was literally stressed out because I loved Tom and Jerry when I was a kid. It was like, for me, I was like, how am I going to tell Disney that I'm a fan of Tom and Jerry when I was a kid? And then this moment came. The person before me started to share, her experience, and she specifically talked about, I think, like 6 years old time. And I don't know what happened, in my head, but I had a flashback on, oh my God, like at 6 years, I remember a morning, like 4 a.m., my parents waking us up from the shelter and just moving us,
Right.
from one home to the other,
Right.
driving like to go to the mountain to keep us safe.
Right.
And,
That was your
and
childhood memory.
yeah, but
Right.
like that was the flashback that I had. But then came
Hmm.
my time, and obviously I didn't talk about Tom and Jerry, so I talked about Vicky. I wasn't courageous enough.
Right.
But
But
literally, reflecting on this, and last time I was discussing, with some other leaders, uh, it made me think a lot, like what we go through. Many times we keep all the positive memories as childs, right? Like I'm sure our kids will remember positive things about the pandemic,
COVID.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I kept positive things about my childhood, and look, yeah, I thought, and I didn't lie. I literally had amazing memories about Disney and other things in my childhood. So how, but it's important to reflect and think and take those learning with us to be
Yes,
able to impact positively, right? And not
exactly.
forget what we've been through, not to repeat it as human beings.
And this helps us understand why you now have a podcast called Spread Love, right? Because of the incredible experiences that you had growing up. And that idea, when you said to me after you described your childhood the first time, then you said, "Oh, it was a wonderful childhood." And I was like, "Excuse me?" But it's because your parents imbued in you that sense of joy and love. And so
Yeah.
you know the power of that and what it can do through incredible trauma, worrying about your home being bombed. When you feel trust, love, and joy, you can do anything. And that's the magic that I think you're bringing to organizations. That's what you're trying to do with this podcast and with the work you're doing. Yes.
Yes, definitely, yes. And it's sure what I lived as a child, and all that we lived during those times. We discussed about this human warmth that I tell, this difference about being in war. In the beginning of the pandemic, for example, I had many times people asking me like, yeah, but it should have been even worse during war. So for you, pandemic is not that hard. And I started to think like, why is it different, right? And it took me to this idea of human warmth, where in fact, during war, yeah, it was super hard. Like war is terrible and it's human made. Like this is what is crazy, right? Like
That's
it's
so
human
frustrating.
made,
Yeah.
and we still
Yeah.
have it around the world, unfortunately.
Right.
But there was something where we were together physically. You had this human warmth. We were the community, the parents. When things were bad, like people would be here to hug each other, to cry together, to laugh together, to have fun together. This pandemic technology is great to put us together, but we missed this, right? Like we missed this human warmth. We missed this hug. We missed this feeling surrounded by people exactly who we care for. So there is like this 2D connection that is amazing, right? Like I just can't imagine how we would have survived without it. But still, this human warmth is different. Right. And so this is, I think, like unconsciously, as you're saying, these are things that I've seen, that I learned about Spread Love. And it's really about this moment, this leadership learnings that I had in the Red Cross that brought me to talk about Spread Love. So, the specific moment I shared on the bombing, this is where I was, what is beyond trust? Right? Like we talk a lot about trust. It's and we see it, right? And I'm sure many of us think our teams trust each other, they trust us, they trust each other cross-functionally, when you talk about organizations. But if there's a problem, if there's a real urgency, if things go bad, what happens?
Yeah.
And many times, and even like in my team, like that was a striking moment where I started to reflect about the Red Cross and my learning. Even my team, where I thought like there was trust, we trust each other, we trust the organization, we trust the different teams and functions. In moment of tensions, everything changed. Right. And this is where you see if real trust exists, because you have finger pointing. No, it's not my fault. It's their fault. Let's try to find who's wrong, who's right. And this is, in fact, what took me, well, if this would happen in the Red Cross, people would die and we would have died. Right. And the trust that we have was there's something beyond it. How did we build it? And it took me to spreading love, which is, in fact, we cared for one another. We genuinely cared for one another. Like one person who, like, you build relationships that are beyond just being co-workers or being in the Red Cross with the same mission. And it starts with sharing the values, having a same purpose.
Common purpose.
Exactly.
And care about that purpose. You didn't just care for each other, but you care deeply about the purpose you're working on together.
Totally. Right? You care about the purpose. You are really strong about the common values that you share. And then you literally care for one another. So when I'm talking about care, it's we care. I knew going in that if anything would happen to me, they would be here. My team would be here for me. They knew that I would be here for them. And beyond that, I knew that they would be here for my parents. They would be here for my family. I knew that the organization, even if it's naive to think though, right? But I knew that, but potentially the organization would be here for me. The Red Cross, the International Red Cross would be here for me. Right. So I think this is what brought me to say, well, the only way to build this, spreading love in organizations, right? Which sounds like a crazy idea, but it's my genuine belief.
Because some people say love and work, how can that go together? But the way you describe it is absolutely essential for people to feel safe, trusted, and empowered and impassioned about what they're doing, is to feel that love, connection, safety, and trust with their team. So take us to, so obviously it's essential. Take us to, how do we create that? What have you found are some of the best ways to create that in your team?
Yeah, and this is, it's one of those things. I think it sounds great when you see it, because ultimately you have the results, right? Like you start with this, and you're doing it towards the purpose, and it delivers amazing results, right? And it's not simple. I think the recipes are simple, but you need to be genuine about it. You literally need to care, right? To be able to build it.
What a surprise. Needs to start with authentic caring.
Oh,
Yes.
exactly. And it's not bad if you don't, right? Like, just for me, well, you're not a people leader, right? And it's fine.
Right.
You can be
Just
some industries or whatever, or functional, or a brilliant expert, right?
right.
But
But if
really,
you don't care about people, then don't
don't lead
be a team
people.
leader. Yeah.
Exactly,
Totally
right?
agree. Yeah.
So
Likewise, if you don't care about patients, maybe you're in the wrong industry,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So it starts, to your question, for me, it starts with genuinely caring,
Good.
really
Yeah.
caring for your people and for what they do.
Yeah.
And then from there, starting to get to know them, right? We hear it a lot, like, and some people try, okay, I'm going to do like 5 minutes, ask you a couple of questions. And then in the next, whatever, one-on-one or meeting, you just feel like, in fact, they asked me, but they really
Don't.
didn't care, right?
Right. Right.
And I think this
So
is the worst
listen.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting to know them, listen, be genuine about it. Are you
Yeah.
interested? Are you intrigued about people, right? Are
Yeah.
you curious to literally know them, to know what makes them better in what they do, who they are as people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do they like? What do they enjoy? And why did they choose your industry? Why did
Right.
they
Why are they
choose
there?
this
What's their why?
purpose, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. What is their why? And
Mm-hmm.
how can you help them, in fact, thrive towards their why? And for me, it really starts with this, right? It starts with people. And then from there, something that I always do is always ground us on why we are here, right? And it can be, I'm here to like execute whatever department you're in, right? I'm not here to just execute a clinical trial. I'm not just here to be in sales and sell more. No, there's something more about it. Like when we
Right.
exist as a team, we exist for a different purpose, right?
Yeah.
We exist for something that's bigger than us,
Yes.
right? Like I'm so
Exactly.
proud to wake up every day and be able to lead teams that are here to change care.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm
Exactly.
in clinical development. Like we're literally writing different care. We're providing a potential hope for patients that doesn't exist today with the therapy that we're developing. When I was in the sales, it's also the same. Every morning, us as people, as teams in sales and pharma, we're waking up and trying to bring all those discoveries, all the research, the development into patients' hand. We're the last mile in sales, right? Like we're making it a reality for physicians to be able to prescribe it safely to patients, right? So this is, for me, it
Connecting the
starts
dots.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Care about your people, literally know what your purpose, and it has to be concrete to your team that goes beyond, quarter results. And then from there, you take it and you make sure that you're executing towards it within the right culture, right? But that you've built it. So for me, this last piece sometimes get lost, between the discussions, and that's an important piece. I always talk about love and discipline, right? It's so important to have love, and it's equally important to be disciplined about how you execute on love and on your work, right? You can't say love and then you just ask one question, then you're not disciplined and genuinely caring about your people and taking them there.
Right.
And it's exactly the same on execution. If you're not focused on how you're going to execute what you have to do, well, you don't have outcomes, you're not successful, and it doesn't work, right? So I
Right.
think this combination of both, like this is how I
Powerful.
kind of framed it.
Right. Naji, what an awesome foundation for leaders listening to start with genuine care, to really listen, to be curious about your people, find out why they're there, identify their purpose, and then help them connect the dots to the common purpose that you're all working on together, right? Then execute to the goal, make sure you're focused on that goal, ensure that you continue to create the culture around you, and add discipline to what you're doing. I just tried to summarize what you said because I think that is just a beautiful recipe for people that are saying, okay, I get it. I think this is the right way to go. Love, care, trust, it obviously is important. There's some of the important ingredients to that recipe right there. It's always amazing how fast time flies here. Before we go, I want to play a little game with you that you like to play with your podcast listeners.
Oh
And in
yeah.
this game, I'm going to say a word, and I want you to share with you your first thoughts around that word. So I want to start with resilience.
It's tough. It's tough to come up with one word. This is where I see many of, the people I'm interviewing. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing this to you.
Turning the tables. And it doesn't have to be one word, just your first thoughts.
Yeah, resilience for me is really, we heard a lot about it, obviously, the last months. But for me, it defines somehow great leaders, and how they take, personally themselves and their teams toward amazing achievements. And I remember, when you talk about resilience, I was in a training with a coach of the French tennis team, and he was telling us, winning teams, what do they have in common? So like, to become champions, right? Because you have amazing, brilliant performance, but just few become champion. And there was, different aspects, right? Like, and it goes back to building trust, to empowerment, to making sure that the team is well connected. And in my head, I always had this, and it was the last word he said, I always had resilience. Like, you
Mm,
cannot become a champion if you're not resilient, right? When you think about
mm-hmm,
any sport, how many times during the game you're just losing? If you're not resilient enough to say, no, I'm not losing, I can come back, I'm
mm-hmm.
accepting defeat, but it's just, it's just a moment, I will come back, you can't do it. So I'm a big believer of this. Many would say, like, we even, as a, French Lebanese, and these Lebanese genes, potentially it's a country built on resilience, right? Like,
Right,
during my childhood, I remember my dad saying, every day is a bonus. I always have this in mind. It's kind of summarizes for me what resilience is, right? Every day
right.
is a bonus. I wake up, yeah, even, a house disappeared after all the year they built, and they did everything to do this, but
Mm-hmm,
they were happy. I still
right.
remember my
It's
mom, when
amazing.
their house, like, where our house got bombed. She was smiling. She was like, I'm so happy, because it's none of you is
Because
harmed.
we're all
We're
safe.
out of it, right? So
Oh,
I think, like, this is where you build somehow the
right,
resilience. So
right,
I have
right.
it from my childhood.
Oh,
I built it the hard way at work because
yeah,
usually in work, wanting to succeed as leaders, many of us are, we don't accept setbacks, we don't accept failure, even if we say, like, yeah, failure is good. I think usually people who, yeah, leaders, it's hard, you learn it the hard way. So seeing sometimes that things didn't work, even if you believed in them, you drove. This story I told you about trust, for me, it's also a lesson of resilience for me,
yeah,
because I generally thought my people trusted each other, and we trusted all the organization to thrive,
yeah,
but yet we did not, right?
yeah,
So how to go back from the setback and say, okay, well, no, it's me, it's not the team. Like, what should I do to make this work better?
yeah.
And this is how I came up with, well, you know what, my priority is to spread love in this organization, and I shared it with like 200 people, right?
Right.
So the resilience for me is really the key for survival,
Yeah.
practically, for human beings.
Oh, and you are the picture of resilience. And I don't want to leave this podcast without addressing an important issue as well. So I'm going to give you two words here: profitability and patient centricity.
It goes, hand in hand, I should say. It starts with patients, right? Like, the focus cannot, and it's any industry, like the
Hmm.
industry whose focus is just profitability, it can be profitable short term, but that's it, right? Like, it won't be sustainable. And more, I literally believe people won't want to work there, right? Like, if your
Yeah,
only focus is whatever profits result, like, why would you wake up, right? Like, we
that's
are
right.
here for a bigger purpose. We're here, and I believe that every person is here on earth trying to bring an impact, right? Trying to do something, whatever it is, right? But just to leave this place and the earth a little bit better than before. Well, I hope so, at least. I'm a humanist by nature, so an enthusiast. But I don't think someone is waking up and saying, I want to do a bad job and I want to make it really bad, right? Like, it's minority if it exists. So this is why, focusing on this bigger purpose would definitely bring results. So in the industry, in the healthcare industry, we have such a noble purpose. Our purpose is literally waking up and helping people live better.
Yeah.
It's such a noble purpose with a huge responsibility, right? And I know many times it's hard to talk about this and then say, okay, there's profits. But yeah, to make it sustainable, the only way for it to move is really working on delivering better care, making sure that patients live better, for us to be able to have results and refuel this and continuously, endlessly bring innovation. Exactly. Right? I think this is where sometimes it's hard for people to accept, to believe, but this is the truth. And I'm not going to go into like the endless, examples of where we brought value, not only as pharma industry, but as a healthcare ecosystem for humanity, right? So I think really focusing on why we do what we do, the results will be here.
Yeah.
And those results are key for us to be able to have this flying wheel of always getting better, right? Like I can't see, I'm in oncology now, like every single additional day that we can bring to patient is just massive.
Yeah.
But do you think I'm happy with just additional days? Like, I think we should never rest as a society, right? Like as authorities, as industry, researcher, physicians, until we find cure to those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where, there's always more that we can do to serve patients, to serve societies, to serve our communities.
Yeah. It makes so much sense when you talk about it, and the evidence supports it, right? When we focus on our purpose, the profits will follow, and those profits help us further focus on our purpose to create more cures. So absolutely. Okay. Final word. And I want you to see if you can come up with one word, that the first word that comes to mind for this one: servant leadership. What word comes to mind?
Love. I like this is I would say how I summarized it, right? Like spread love is not more than servant leadership, genuine care, fearless organizations, from Amy Edmondson, and so many great researchers, thought leaders who talked about this, right? It's just this. I think the word love makes it a little bit different. People would stop when they hear an executive saying, I want to spread love. But it's exactly this. How you care about your people and you make sure that there's a culture where they can be themselves and they can thrive towards the common and shared purpose that the organization have.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So many words of wisdom to help us first want to spread love in organizations, and secondly, know how to do it. So thank you so much, Naji. You are such an inspiration. Thank you for helping us on our journey to leading with genuine care and love for better health for our teams, our community, and around the world. You're helping us make our difference in the world. So thank you so much for the incredible effort you're putting into this podcast and bringing stories to us. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Following this podcast, or please follow this podcast for more inspiring stories from global leaders in healthcare. And stay connected with Naji. You can follow, subscribe, leave a review on Apple, Google, or Spotify. That helps others find this important podcast and helps you spread the movement. So please go out there and spread love. Yeah, spread love in your organizations and inspire others to join this movement. Our world so desperately needs it. Thank you.